Good afternoon and welcome. At this time, I'd like to call our City Council work session to order. Our first topic for discussion will be a rural broadband initiative update. Mr. Manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Introducing our guest from Charter Communications will be Rob Salick, our Interim Director of Information Technology. Rob.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. I will be introducing Joe Prater. He is the Charter Senior Director of Government Affairs. Joe.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here. Happy to report on a lot of the progress we've made on our VATI and RDOF builds here in the city of Suffolk. So if we can jump into the presentation with the next slide, or am I controlling it here? Oh, perfect. So I think everybody here is familiar with Charter. We're quite a large provider across the country with over 58 million homes passed. But more specifically, in the state of Virginia, our largest presence is in the Hampton Roads area, particularly here around the city of Suffolk. We serve 51 communities across the state. We've got about 150 employees, some of which live and work here in the city of Suffolk. But most of you today, we're here to talk about how we're coming along with our VATI build. This map here on the left shows the gray area is our existing network across the city of Suffolk, and then those blue shaded CBGs are our RDOF, which is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which is a commitment we made to the FCC to build out all of the locations, 100% of the locations inside of those census block groups. On the right there, the yellow polygons are the VATI, which you may be familiar with as the state's broadband grant program, are the VATI areas that we were awarded back in late 2021, and we signed our contracts in early 2022. But as you can see, the ultimate goal of the VATI agreement was to fill in those remaining gaps between our existing network and the RDOF CBGs. Keep in mind, back in 2021, the state and all service area data at that time was using census block data, not address-specific data like we providers report now and broadband offices use for their service area data. So again, here's the snapshot of what the original areas. You'll see some of those VATI areas were overlapping with what we were already currently serving, again, back to the 2021 data. And so we discovered some of that, of course, throughout the build. But most importantly, what we want to talk about today is how's the build coming along? So again, here's our existing service area, our RDOF area. We have completed all of our RDOF in the city, and we have completed the vast majority of our VATI locations. So the green dots there are all of those that were completed. But what I want to spend a little time talking about is what remains. And it's a little hard unless you can zoom in on the map, but there are 39 orange dots. Most of them are in and around on the fringes of those existing network areas. Those are what's left of the original VATI build. They're pending permits. We're working with the city. They're working well with us to get those processed, but those are the 39 left that we can build. I do want to spend some time talking about ROE, which stands for right of entry. A lot of folks don't understand that when we deploy our broadband networks at the parcel level, oftentimes if there's private property, we will be required to get some type of easement to either access that particular property, and oftentimes properties on the other side of it. And so there are 140 residential ROEs that we are trying to get a hold of property owners. There's already been an initial outreach. At the beginning of our build, our construction teams typically knock on doors or relieve a door hanger if we know that we need to get some type of easement to build to that location, or like I said, the ones on the other side of it. The same goes for MDUs. That could be a duplex up to some type of apartment complex. Oftentimes we need some type of legal right of entry to enter that community, whether it's the property owner or a management company. So there's 323 of those across the city that, again, we're trying to gain access to get broadband to those areas. One of the strategies we're going to do, and this is actually the first time we've done this in any of our rural builds, is we're going to send letters to each of these property owners, essentially letting them know this federal funding is available. It has an expiration date. And so we really, if they want us to use this funding to build to them, we really need to get access to it sooner than later. We're going to give a 60-day window for them to report back to us. If they don't respond or if they deny us access, we'll have to work with the state to then adjust the build for those reasons that are outside of our control. But again, today's update, of the nearly 3,200 locations, 1,700 built with RDOF, almost 1,000 done with VATI. We're going to spend the next 6 months or so trying to figure out those last ones that require some additional right of entry. And then lastly, we've had a number of site visits with the state for this VATI build, for the Hampton Roads build. We had one last month. We actually met right here in the city of Suffolk in the conference room next door where I gave a similar brief out on our progress in Suffolk, but then of course our progress in Southampton and Isle of Wight as well. Then we went out into the field to do some inspections of the infrastructure. Same as right now. At that time last month, there wasn't much to see in Suffolk because it's all either pending permits or pending access from property owners. So we traveled over to Isle of Wight and into Southampton. Again, some pictures here from that day, which was a great opportunity for the localities, the Planning District Commission, and the state to kind of get out and see where these investments have been made. So all in all, it was a great day. The Virginia Office of Broadband actually was very complimentary of the partnership between Charter, the 3 localities, and the Planning District Commission. There's not a lot of VATI builds of this scale across the state that were able to build as much as we were in the time that we were. So, and a lot of that is attributed to the partnership between us and the localities. And so I just want to say thank you to the city for your partnership through this build as well. I know that was short and sweet, but just want to open the floor if there's any questions. And I'll go back to the most important slide, which shows our progress.
Council, questions or comments? Councilmember Butler Barlow.
Thank you, Mayor. So on this page, there's about 500 sites that are not served yet.
Yes, ma'am.
And I live at the end of a long lane out in the country.
Okay.
So I've been asking the question about this last mile service and so forth. So how does somebody like myself find out if we're in that list of 500 or so that still have not been contacted?
The state has a really good, I think it's called the Commonwealth Connection Map that's on their website that shows all of the project areas funded by the VATI program.
Okay.
As far as the RDOF, which all of it's been built in Suffolk, so there's nothing left remaining that. So there's really no reason to look up any of those locations. But if it's inside of a VATI build, it would be on the Commonwealth Connection Map.
Okay.
But of course, I'll leave my contact information, whether it's your address or any constituents. I'll be more than happy to look at any particular location.
All right, because I've had, again, I understand it personally because it's my situation, but I've had calls from a number of people that, they know that the service goes by on a main road, but they live, half a mile. I'm 3/4 of a mile off of the main drag, so trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Absolutely. And sometimes it may come down to the private property issue that I was talking about.
Right, and so how does that, so you have to get,
So I can
how
explain.
how would that work if you have, so one of these that you need a right of entry, walk me through how that process works.
Sure. So in the actual overall build process, after we've been made an award, we do what's called a walkout. So our company will physically walk out every foot of the network that we're planning to build to determine a number of things. One, where are we going to get on poles? Where will we need to go underground? They also take a look at county GIS data at the parcel level to see, where's there a public right-of-way? If there's a private property that we know we're going to have to pass to get to either that location or locations beyond it, they'll initially go knock on the door and say, hey, we need to get some type of easement agreement in place for us to get you service or your neighbor's service. And we also will, if we don't answer, we'll leave a door hanger. And so we did that probably a year or two ago.
Yeah, and I talked to a number of people that came out and, made a lot of notes, and so, but it's then, here we are at the other end of it, so, yeah.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do. It's like
Yeah.
we know that these funds are going to expire. quite frankly, we'll have to have it built by the end of June next year.
Okay.
And so that's why we're trying to do outreach as soon as possible, give folks 60 days, because that'll give us time to actually build it in order to close it out with the state, and because the state has to actually disperse those funds
Right.
by the end of next year. I think y'all are very familiar with the ARPA funds, right? And there's
Right.
timelines with it. And so this is, like I said, the first time we've done this, this is going to be essentially our last ditch effort to say, hey, if you want us to utilize these funds to get to you, we really need to know as soon as we can.
Right, okay, very good, thank you.
And the city has been great partners with this. We had a lot of brainstorming sessions around how can we reach out to property owners, and ultimately came to this idea of sending a letter with essentially a 60-day window for them to reach out to us.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Council, any other questions or comments? If not, thank you very much for your presentation. We recently had a presentation from Glow Fiber as well in regards to broadband access. And you put a time frame to it when you said beginning of 2021. I was trying to remember how far back it was. But I could remember that during the 2020 election cycle in November, access to broadband was in the top 2 or 3 issues across the city, especially in our rural areas where they had to deal with COVID, the schools being out, not having access for their kids to be able to engage in their schoolwork. And back then, I would say it was, I'm going to pull a number of close to 20,000. Is that right? Yeah, we had close to 20,000 folks that either were underserved or not served at all. So in 4.5 years ago, going from there to where we are right now is just amazing. And you mentioned that it did take a partnership with the state, the feds, the city itself, the providers, and everybody came together to make it happen. So I want to thank you and congratulate you on how far we've come and just this little bit to go. And I'm sure if there's anything that we can do to help you get in touch with those folks, but I think you're going about it the right way. Send them the notice, 60 days, times of the essence, or it goes away and, you're going to end up paying for it.
Right.
When it's all said and done with. So once again, thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, our next item for discussion this afternoon will be a draft presentation of the 2026 legislative agenda. Mr. Manager.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, it's that time of year where our city leadership begins to put their thoughts together as it relates to the draft legislative agenda, working with Nicole Porter in our office, who then collaborates with Mindy Carlin at Access Point Public Affairs to put together the City of Suffolk legislative agenda. And so today you will receive the draft agenda. We'd love to receive your guidance and thoughts following this as we move it forward for final adoption in a month or so. Mindy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I am Mindy Carlin, Access Point Public Affairs. I'm very pleased to be back and talking through our priorities for 2026. Fortunately, we've had a lot of successes over the past several years. So while some things are consistent in the agenda, some things you'll note are not here because we have accomplished those. So, and I will highlight there are a few new items for your consideration this year. So we have structured the agenda similarly to last year. You may recall we shifted things a little bit to identify the most important items, but also enable us to actively engage on other priorities as well. So we have policy priorities that I'll briefly describe, then funding priorities, and then policy positions in a number of different areas. So starting with our policy priorities, the first item is not new, but it is new with respect to its emphasis in our proposed platform, and that is to strengthen regional transportation funding. The proposed position supports increased regional funding to finance and construct critical unfunded primary and secondary road improvements in the city and across the region, as well as recognizes the need for dedicated sustainable transit funding to strengthen regional mobility, expand access to jobs and services, and ensure the interconnectivity of our transportation network. There was legislation the last 2 sessions actually with respect to the first piece of this, primary and secondary road improvements. We had supported that. Suffolk is a significant beneficiary of the list of projects that would receive funding if a proposal moves forward to increase regional funding. And so while we have been supportive, we're proposing this be elevated and be among our top priorities this session. Last year, the legislation without a funding source did pass out of the legislature, but was vetoed by the governor. And I know we've been actively engaged with HRPDC and the TPO on this matter as well. The second priority, we will be seeking a charter change bill this year. There are 3 provisions where we'll be seeking amendments to the city's charter. They should not be controversial. They really are to modernize some outdated provision in the charter and align it with what's been happening in practice. So the first has to do with council composition. The language in our charter needs to be amended to correct the language to reflect 8 council members, consistent with the addition of the directly elected mayor, which happened in 2008. So that is definitely outdated and will need to be updated. There is an item related to the city clerk, where we'll be requesting that obsolete language that dates all the way back to the 1970s related to an initial appointment term will be removed, and there will be clarity with respect to the appointment process and responsibilities of the clerk as exist in practice today. And then the third provision in our charter bill that pending your approval, of course, that we'll be seeking has to do with department oversight, where we'll be requesting updated language to reflect the city manager's direct responsibility for department directors, which again is consistent with the current practice. And then the third policy priority is not new. We have broadened the language a little bit to give us additional flexibility, and this is to strengthen support for our 911 dispatchers. I know that none of you will disagree with in acknowledging the really critical public safety role that our 911 dispatchers play, yet they face heavy stress, high stress, heavy demands, and turnover as a result. And so in response to this, the city is going to continue our efforts to support policy solutions that strengthen recruitment, training, wellness, and retention of these dispatchers. Previously, we have, the approach that we've taken is to support enhanced retirement benefits for dispatchers. That may very well be the approach that's taken this year as well, but thought strengthening, or I guess broadening the language would help us to pursue other solutions outside of just pursuing changes to retirement benefits that could also be impactful. So we are asking that this be included in the priorities again this year. There are a number of funding priorities as well. None that will be a direct and ask that is specific to Suffolk alone, which has been different than the previous several years when we have had very specific Suffolk projects for which funding has been requested. The first is school construction and modernization. For the past several years, there has been legislation that we have supported that would enable funding for school construction. At a local option sales tax has been the proposal that has passed the General Assembly the past 2 years, but both years has been vetoed by the governor. So we are going to continue, we are recommending that we continue to support increased state support for school construction and modernization. And you can see the significant needs that we have to keep pace with this in the city. A new item that is proposed this year would be a statement on state support for fire services. This is being spearheaded by the association at the state level for fire chiefs, and so we wanted to invite the council to consider adding this to our agenda so that we could proactively support an increase in state investment to ensure that our local departments have the resources that they need. So specifically, this will include increased aid to localities funding, modernization to the distribution formula to reflect community needs, and sustained grant funding for equipment, vehicles, recruitment, and retention. And so that is the proposal that's before you for your consideration. A couple other funding priorities, also new to this year's proposed package, is additional state funding for the Department of Forensic Science, specifically in Norfolk, which we use. There's concern about the lag times and evidence processing, and so we are seeking additional support for forensic science to help address that. Consistent with our previous positions, we also are recommending that we keep the items related to compliance with federal lead service line mandates, Crumps Mill Pond Dam improvements as well, which were in our previous several years' platforms. We also are maintaining our list of long-term transportation projects. Not a lot of changes here. Some of the numbers have slightly changed, but I will highlight the item on the North Suffolk Connector Study. This is new. We are seeking $500,000 for a study of a proposed 2-lane roadway that would connect Nansemond Parkway with Shoulders Hill Road. This will provide an unimpeded route between northern Suffolk and downtown Suffolk. And so that is an addition. The other transportation projects are consistent with what you have supported previously. We also have, we're shifting now to the policy positions. And so these, again, as a reminder, are items where we won't be proactively seeking legislation or budget items, but where we would like to be supportive of initiatives that may be undertaken in these areas. And so there are a number of things in the public safety arena. We will are recommending that we continue to support efforts to reduce the law enforcement burden that they have to encounter with mental health crises. We also encountered, as you guys may recall from my report after the most recent session, that public safety technology solutions and the speed cameras in particular, speed cameras, work zone cameras, school zone cameras, we continue to struggle to protect that authority that we currently have. So we expect that to likely be the case this session as well, and we'll want to protect that. There's a statement that is consistent with last year on protecting qualified and sovereign immunity, supporting flexibility to address our juvenile detention needs. You may recall that Chesapeake ended its lease arrangement with us in 2023, and we continue to struggle with those juveniles that have to be displaced to other facilities across the Commonwealth. So with like flexibility, right now there is a moratorium at the state level on any new facilities, and while we may not be ready to seek one, we would want flexibility to pursue solutions. Also in the public safety, and again, these are both consistent with previous positions, that we would like to protect the correctional facility fees and commission structure that we rely on now, as well as restore authority for public safety stops. So we have a couple things that we'll be recommending that we maintain in transportation. These are both consistent with previous positions. The first is prioritize evacuation routes and transportation funding. We know that Smart Scale does not take into account whether or not a infrastructure is an evacuation route. We have a lot of evacuation routes within the city of Suffolk, and we are constrained in our ability to get funding through Smart Scale for those projects, and so would like there to be some way for evacuation routes to be prioritized in the distribution of state funding. And then second, under transportation, expand toll relief. I'm sure you will recall 2 years ago, additional toll relief was adopted by the General Assembly. However, in order to manage the impact of that to the Commonwealth, Senate Finance staff, or I should say Money Committee staff, included language that is kind of a funky formula that does not allow those individuals who reside within the city of Suffolk to benefit from that program regardless of their individual fiscal situation. And so we maintain in our position that we would like to see that toll relief be more appropriately available to those residents in the city. Under finance and regulation, I understand the clerk is here and would like to briefly speak to the first item, which is new. So I will, Mr. Mayor, if it's acceptable to you, allow him to. Great.
Thank you, ma'am. Just for the record, Randy Carter. First thing, let me tell you what an excess fee is, because we're talking about excess fees. Every year, the state gives the clerk a certain amount of money, let's say about $700,000 for salaries. You take that figure and divide it by 12, so you get a monthly average. If we generate more fees than that monthly average is, that's called an excess fee. And the statute, and this is sort of the dichotomy here, if you look at the statute says it goes 2/3 to the locality, 1/3 to the state. But if you look at the budget language, they flip-flopped it about 10, 12 years ago. And there's about 38 other localities in the state that are excess fees. Suffolk is an excess fee. I believe Ms. Carlin has figures. We've lost $1.5 million. What we want to do is to go and have this form, simply take the budget language out, go back and rely on the statute, so the city will get the 2/3 that they're supposed to get. Just as a public relations thing, this money is not earmarked for the clerk. It goes back, no, and that's important because it goes back to the city's general fund for the city to expend in whatever form or fashion you as collectively feel is proper. So there's no strings attached. I know Chesterfield has it on their agenda. Loudoun has it on their agenda. Fairfax, Arlington County, Hanover does, and there are going to be others coming on board. So I would certainly ask that you keep this in your legislative packet. The clerks are going to be carrying the load on this thing. We're just simply asking the city if they're meeting with someone. But we got this thing through the money committees last year at Dayton Conference. We got it that close last year. So we're hoping that the city maybe help us get across the finish line here this year and that we can generate some money for the city. So I'll stop right now. If there are any questions about it, I'll be happy to speak, to answer them, and I'll return it back to this young lady here. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mindy Carlin again with Access Point. As the clerk noted, we will be working, if this is approved, be working with the association on this. And I'll note, just from a process standpoint, it may seem confusing that something may be stated a certain way in code, but then a different way in the budget, and how do you know which applies? And so the way it works in Virginia, the budget is legislation, but it does trump the code. And so any language that is in the budget, it's only good for 2 years, the length of time for that budget. But if there is a discrepancy between the budget and the code, the budget language trumps that. And while it's only a 2-year bill, if the language stays in, then it stays in. And obviously, it would have a negative fiscal impact to the state if this were that language were removed and that additional funding came back to the locality, or stayed within the locality, I should say. But just in case there were questions about what that means. Moving on, within the finance and regulations, all of these positions are consistent with what we have had in the past, and they're really in the preserve and protect kind of realm. We want to protect our local government taxing authority. We want to protect against unfunded mandates, and we want to protect the historic rehabilitation tax credit, which we have used successfully for numerous projects within the city. Moving on to community development and planning. The first is a longstanding commitment and position of this city, and that is to protect funding to maintain historic African American cemeteries. There is a program in place at the state level. We have supported that, and we're proposing that we continue to support and protect that funding. The second item is a new item, and this is to enhance collaboration on industry trends and infrastructure needs. And so this really falls within the economic development space and really supports increased collaboration with our economic development partners so that we can develop industry-specific, or have access to industry-specific infrastructure profiles and have more information and data sharing with respect to industry trends, project outcomes, infrastructure workforce gaps, so that we have those tools to help improve the economic development, planning, marketing, and allocation of resources within the city. And then the last two are also in the preserve and protect mode. We want to preserve local land use authority, and I don't want to just go over that too quickly because that has been at risk the last several years. And so we are going to have a different General Assembly, we will have a different governor, and it is important that we be steadfast in our position to protect local land use authority. And then with this also protect local eminent domain and right-of-way authority. So next, the last position area, certainly last but not least, is that we are recommending that we continue to have a statement supporting an investment in farmland preservation programs, in the protection of forested land, and that we protect local water management funding. That is the conclusion of my slides, Mr. Mayor. I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carlin. Council, questions or comments? Councilmember Rector?
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation, Mindy. I suppose, once again, with the changeover that's probably going to happen in November, even if it's the same people or same party but different people, there's going to be a lot of new faces that everybody's going to have to get to know up there. And I know that your group is ready to take on the challenge, as always. My question to you is, one of the things that got passed last year was that dilapidated structures bill in the land bank thing. If I remember, there was a little bit of confusion, not necessarily confusion, but the language in it about the timelines that were established in there. It had to be started within 6 months, had to be done within 2 years and whatnot. Do you anticipate that legislation maybe being looked at and refined anymore?
I have heard, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Rector, there has been some discussion about that from my colleague in Newport News. And so I do believe that there may be some localities working on that, and we will absolutely make sure, if you have strong feelings or believe that we need something in our platform about that, I think we can certainly look at that for sure. But I do believe we probably have the language we need to ensure that the city's interests are represented if something is pursued on that issue.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I have three things. The first one is with school construction and modernization. Is that going to be handled in such a way that all municipalities are going to be on equal footing as far as what their needs are? Who's going to make that? I mean, I know the system will make the choice, but I honestly think we need to be well represented, and that really is a big deal for our city.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. I think the reason why we included in our platform, at least our draft for you, is language with seeking additional state funding, but not defining how that funding may be secured, is really because there are any number of different routes that could happen. For example, one of the proposal that I referenced that has successfully passed the last 2 sessions would equalize Suffolk with the other localities that currently have the right to increase their sales tax at a local option up to 1%. To help fund school construction. There are some localities that have that authority, but not all. And so that legislation passed, and it doesn't require a locality to make that choice, but it does equalize that authority across the state. There also have been there have been proposals, for example, to authorize a casino in Northern Virginia. That would authorize that would enable an additional funding for school construction that could be spread throughout the Commonwealth. So there are lots of ways that the General Assembly may consider the topic, and we just wanted to have the flexibility, recognizing how important the issue is within the city, to be able to engage on that and ensure that any proposals that we have the ability to consider them, reflect on them, and share our views.
All right, good. And second question.
Yes, sir.
Route 58 Gateway Study.
Yes.
Elaborate just a little.
Yes, sir. Let me open my So this is something that, that we have had on our agenda previously. So the purpose of this is that we would like to work with VDOT to evaluate improvements to the existing Route 58, whether that is the route to go or whether a limited option approach may make more sense, but have concerns that right now there hasn't been that evaluation of how to move forward, and that has left us without a pathway. And so this funding would enable a feasibility study so that these different options could be considered and a path forward could be developed.
That's what I wanted you to say. But
Yes, sir.
And the third thing is just a comment on the prioritizing the evacuation routes and transportation funding. This is way overdue.
Yes, sir.
And it's something that should have been done years ago. So I strongly endorse that as far as how it can enable our city to take these. And it's not only 58. We've got all over the city, we've got evacuation routes that need to be considered. So thank you for that. Oh, otherwise, thank you. A very, very good report.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Bennett?
Hey, just one question, do a little follow-up on the schools. I was at a VML conference meeting, and they brought up that they're looking to present to the legislators where in the localities can tax 1% for school construction. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Councilman, that is legislation that has been considered the past 2 years that I had referenced, and it has passed and was vetoed by the governor. So given that support of the current General Assembly, at least, I think there is an expectation that it will move forward again, and with a different governor, there may be a different outcome.
Okay, because I know the VML is supporting moving forward with the referendum to
Yes,
give
sir.
the authority to the cities to be able to do that.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Ward?
Yes, I see you have protecting funding to maintain historic African-American cemeteries. That's something that you gonna be concentrating more in locally or state or which?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Councilman, so I think that the framework exists today at the state level. There is a program and there is funding within that program. And so I have not been made aware of any changes that we would need to that program or to the funding levels for that to enable us to seek that funding. And so at this point, it really is in the city's hands to, and I believe that those discussions have been happening to determine if and where there are projects that would be eligible for the program where funding could be sought so that that money could be coming into the community to help maintain those.
Yeah, thank you, because I got a phone call today in reference of that, and I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding it. So things are gonna start looking good for me. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Council, any other questions or comments? If not, thank you for your presentation. I do have a couple of comments and maybe a question or two. In regards to the additional funding, I know the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization sent a letter to our legislators in regards to asking for additional funding primarily for secondary roads. And what I didn't realize is Route 58 and Route 460 are classified as a secondary road, even though they don't look like secondary roads. So as you mentioned, we would be the recipient if they did pass something of a good percentage of those funds. We did not tell them how to do it, but we did make a suggestion, and it was agreed by the other localities that 0.3 of a penny be added to the sales tax specifically for that purpose. Now, it didn't pass last year, but I know the support is still there for it as a region, and that's what it takes to get the majority of anything done is have regional support behind it rather than just an individual city. So hopefully that will move forward. We talked about charter changes, and I'm going to bring something up really weird. I don't want, because I haven't mentioned it before. But when it comes to charter changes, if we were to choose to add like an at-large member to council, is this the same process that we go through? Because we've kind of got a cockamamie number with 8. Very seldom does any board have an even number on it. It's usually an odd number, so it takes the ties out coming and going. So is this something,
So
let me
that-
refer
that-
that to our city attorney.
That has a process that we would need to discuss
Yeah,
at a different time that doesn't fit into this legislative agenda. We can certainly present it to you, but there is a process for that.
okay, but it would,
But it would require, ultimately
requires.
require a charter change.
Yeah,
correct?
that's what I was getting at. It requires a charter change. I knew that'd mess everybody up. The 9/11 issue with our 9/11 personnel, I think the bottom line is that they're treated like all first responders and entitled to the same type of benefits, where they haven't been, it hasn't exactly been like that in the future. So if we can keep working towards that, that would be great. I did notice that you're asking for support for the federal led service line mandates. So are we going to ask the state for funds to compensate for a federal mandate, or are we lobbying our federal legislators?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think we'll take it where we can get it.
Okay, I'll get that.
Right, I should note that the legislative agenda is not solely a state legislative agenda, and so we also have pursued and been successful in achieving federal support for some of our priorities.
Okay, and then you mentioned on page 9, the juvenile detention centers, that there's a moratorium from the state that they are not providing any assistance
No, sir.
for juvenile detention?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, there is a moratorium on establishing new juvenile detention facilities, any new facility.
Okay, because we spend a few dollars to have a certificate, a needs analysis for a juvenile detention center. So
Yes, sir.
why would we be doing that if it doesn't make any difference? Or is it just for funding wise? So the needs is going to say we can do it, but they're going to say we're not going to send you any funding for it.
So, Mr. Mayor, I will say that when I go to Richmond every year, the purpose is, one of my many purposes is to change the law where improvements would benefit those who I represent. And so this is an example where there is a current moratorium on the establishment of any new juvenile justice facilities, but that doesn't mean that the law could not be changed. It's actually budget language, I believe. And we are not proactively seeking that at this time because we're not ready, as I understand it, to propose something where that would be our barrier. However, the rationale behind it is that regardless of if we were to carry all of the costs to develop, or if we required no state funding to develop a new juvenile detention facility, they would still be responsible for educating the juveniles. And so there is a state component, and that is why they have the authority to determine whether or not a facility can move forward or not.
Do you know what the rationale was placing a moratorium?
Mr. Mayor, council members, the rationale is that there's a member of the Senate, Senator Dave Marsden is his name. He used to be the director of juvenile justice for the Commonwealth many, many years ago. Now he is a member of the Senate. And he and others have evaluated and have very strong feelings about the capacity across the Commonwealth, the number of beds for juvenile detention, and concerns that perhaps we have adequate, or a perspective that there is adequate capacity now and new facilities are not needed. There also are some who politically don't believe in juvenile detention. So I think, as is the case in a lot of what we do in politics is a factor. I think if we as a city get to a point where we have something that we are ready to pursue, and we have data that shows that it's needed with a plan, then I think we would be in a position to be able to challenge that moratorium at that time if it was in place. But right now, I don't understand that we are in that place.
Well, we can certainly provide the data. I mean, you have to be in a different ozone to think we don't have a shortage on juvenile detention centers. Every single locality has struggled to do that, where we were taking juveniles to Chesapeake. Chesapeake no longer accepts juveniles from other localities. I mean, we're sending officers 100 miles away because you're mandated, the state mandates that you find a bed somewhere in the Commonwealth. And if it's 100 miles from here, then you're traveling 100 miles. So I don't know who's got their head buried in the sand or some other place, but it just boggles my mind that they don't think that there's not a need for a juvenile detention center. And to say, bring us a plan, why would anybody spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a plan that you may not be able to implement without some type of support from the state? So I'm really, it's just kind of mind-boggling to me that somebody doesn't perceive this as an issue. So whatever we need to do to get that across, I know from a regional standpoint, we can do that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to. The Council on Youth actually commissioned a study that looked at this issue, and I'd be happy, it's a couple years old, but I'd be happy to share that with you just so that you may not ultimately agree with where things ended up with respect to the moratorium. You would at least have a better understanding of what was evaluated and how they reached that conclusion at that time.
Well, you can also get something from the Western Tidewater Regional Jail, because we just completed a needs analysis.
Yes, sir.
That has an expiration date on it, among all things. So that information should be readily available. So if we could get in touch with the superintendent, he also knows what other localities are struggling with the same issues, then I think we can put together the stats that says it's needed. Now, if they still don't want to fund it, that's one thing. But to say we don't want to fund it because we don't think it's needed, I mean, this guy's on something. I don't know what. But anyhow, okay, we'll get off of that. The toll relief deal, you're exactly right. We need to address the toll relief. We get Portsmouth getting toll relief, Norfolk getting toll relief, Franklin getting toll relief. We skip over Suffolk. They don't get any toll relief. And it's unfortunate the process they use to determine who gets toll relief and not. And it's not based on the individual. It's based on the city's ability to pay. There's a number there, and if you exceed the number, you don't get any money. Well, the money is not for the city. The money is going to the citizens of that city. And when you have a city as diverse as we do, with census areas where the average income is $30,000 and somewhere it's $130,000, it's not fair and it's not equitable that Suffolk was skipped over. And I think we as a city got just blindsided on that. I mean, it just baffled me. I've got my own hypothesis as to why that happened, because there's only X number of dollars, so you have to back into the dollars to figure out how to make it work. And as long as Norfolk and Portsmouth get it, everybody else is, stuck out there. But they're not doing our citizens any service at all. And we have, I'm sure, a lot more folks going through the tunnel than Franklin has, or Newport News, or Hampton for that matter. So anything that we can do or I can do, or anybody else can do from this end, make sure we let us know so we can talk to whoever we have to talk to try to convince them otherwise.
Yes, sir. And if I could, Mr. Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we present now and then give you time to have this kind of conversation and dialogue and then act on the agenda in about a month is so that we can all kind of, work through these issues and figure out what we want to prioritize in seeking action during the legislative session, because we can't do everything. Nope. And so part of what we'd really love your feedback on, the way that we have put this in front of you as staff, is that the priorities for the coming session, where we would seek seek legislation, seek budget amendments proactively are on the regional transportation, the charter changes, and the support for the dispatchers on the policy side, and then the funding priorities as they've been identified. So some of the other position statements and the policy positions, so these are items where we would not necessarily lead, but where we could definitely play a role in communicating and advocating for the city if the opportunity it presents itself. So for council, I want you to understand that just because something is on here doesn't mean we're going to be seeking legislation for everything. And if there is something that you think we should, then we need to have that conversation and elevate that or make some shifts.
And that's what I'm saying. Some things like
Yes,
the
sir.
toll relief, they're going, that's something that we as a city are going to be more vested in than any of the other cities. Now, Chesapeake and Virginia Beach were also omitted from the formula, but it doesn't affect their citizens like it affects our citizens that are going east to work or to shop or wherever they're going. So that's the type of thing we need to concentrate on. And there's one other thing, I'll let you go, and it has to do with the smart scale funding. And I know they were amending the smart scale percentages, so it would be based less on congestion. Also identify evacuation routes, but another thing they were supposed to do is identify freight corridors. There was a study done, I believe, last summer that identified certain roads as freight corridors, and we all know 460 and 58 is a freight corridor, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So we need to ensure that that type of language is in there also. And but like you mentioned, that's a regional issue as well, and I'll address it from the regional side, but from the legislative side, if you could just, anything that I can do to make sure that we take advantage of anything we can.
Yes, sir.
All righty, that's all I got. Anybody think anything they'd like to ask now that I ate all that time up? No? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
looking forward to what we can get done this year.
Absolutely. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, with that being said, that concludes our work session. We do have a need for a closed meeting this evening. Madam Clerk, will you please read the motion for consideration?
Pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for appointment and the assignment, appointment, and performance of specific public officers or appointees of the city, specifically the appointments as shown on the attached list for vacancies or term expirations, for the Early Childhood Development Commission, the Historic Landmarks Commission, the Human Services Advisory Board, the Local Board of Building Code Appeals, the Paul D. Camp Community College Board, the Suffolk Clean Community Commission, the Planning Council, and the Tidewater Youth Services Commission. Item number 2, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3, the discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically tax map parcels 37G23A asterisk 121, 34G 23A asterisk 21, 34G 23-3 asterisk 1-20, 34G 23-4 asterisk number 1, 34G A asterisk 115A, 34G 23A asterisk 115B, and 25 asterisk 45A.
Council, what's your pleasure? Vice Mayor Ward?
Move to approve.
Got a motion for approval from Vice Mayor Ward. Councilmember Rector?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Rector. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
If council members Bennett, Johnson, Rector, Vice Mayor Ward, and Councilmember Williams could cast their votes, please. The motion is approved by a vote of 8-0.
This meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6 p.m. I'm going to run this over to